According to Wikipedia, intentional camera movement, otherwise known as ICM, is when a camera is moved during the exposure for a creative or artistic effect. This causes the image points to move across the recording medium, producing an apparent streaking in the resulting image. Now, this is a technique that I've never tried before, but I'm always keen to improve my photography, and learning new techniques is just one way to do that. So today in this video, I'm going to take you on my first journey into the world of ICM landscape photography. Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Now, as I've just said, I've never tried ICM before, at least not intentionally. And really that's the whole point. It's intentional camera movement during the exposure. So in order to achieve this, we need to have a fairly lengthy shutter speed for handheld purposes anyway. So, normally I'd want to be shooting at 250 for a second or something to freeze the movement. But now I need to be shooting around the fifth of a second to maybe half a second, even to 1 second, so that I can move the camera very slightly during the exposure to get that sort of abstract painterly feel about it. Now, I want to try a few different sort of techniques today. I want to try sort of the left to right pan, the up and down pan, the subtle shakes, the extreme shakes, and also zooming during the exposure. And that's what I'm going to do with this first shot. Now, there's a group of trees behind me, which I think might be quite nice for this. And as it's my first ICM shot, I want to keep things a little bit simple for myself. So I'm leaving IBIS on the camera. I'm shooting aperture priority mode. And because I'm shooting in woodland, I'm getting relatively long exposures anyway. So at f10, I'm getting a tenth of a second, which I'm hoping will be okay for this. And basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to slightly move the zoom. Now I'm going to review those shots just very quickly. Yeah, that shutter speed's not really working for me, so I'm going to try taking my aperture to f14, which is now giving me fifth of a second. And let's try this. So I'm getting quarter of a second. I'm going to go to f18 for 2.5 seconds. No. I'm going to try f16, quarter of a second. And as you can see, I take the shot. I'm trying to let it record virtually most of the exposure, pretty static, and then sort of just zoom slightly back at the end. I'm going to try it the other way. I'm going to try zooming in at the start of the exposure, because in theory the zoom burst will go opposite direction. And it's definitely just a case of trial and error. But hopefully I've got something there. Let's have a look at the shot, and I'll see you at my next location. Now, I should of course have pointed out that I've set my camera to the base ISO of ISO 100. It's simply because I want a fairly long shutter speed, and that's really the only way to achieve it. If it gets much brighter, what I'll have to do is I'll have to put a filter on to try and block out some light. But anyway, I've got a good subject, I think, for trying a little bit of subtle shake. And what it is, this is an old wagon way, so basically it's quite nice and straight, but there's a nice archway of trees over it. So I'm hoping a little bit of subtle shake. I'll just turn off IBIS, because of course I don't want the camera trying to compensate for my shaking. And I'm going for around the 5th second mark. So by using aperture priority, by going to f11, I'm getting 5th of a second. So let's try it, and I'm just going to sort of shake it like that whilst pressing the button. And you see I'm doing a few, I haven't got a clue what I'm getting. So I'm going to go to f9, which is 1/8 of a second, and try the same. And then now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to f14, which gives me 1/4 second, and I'm going to do the same as I did with the zoom burst. I'm going to go a bit wider. I'm not really sure at the moment what difference the choice of focal length actually makes. I suspect as I zoom in, the more movement I make will be exaggerated more. as opposed to being wider, it's probably going to be a bit more subtle. I'm not really sure. As I say, I'm a complete beginner to this process. Yeah, I'm really not sure. It's not. In some ways, it's far easier putting your camera on a tripod and composing a shot and knowing exactly what you're going to get, as opposed to using your camera handheld with a long shutter speed and moving it intentionally to try and create something. But maybe that's part of the fun, the challenge. I'm actually going to try a more extreme flick on it. So I'm going to go for f18, which is giving me 1.6 seconds. I'm going to let it fire for about a second and then I'm going to twist it. I'll do it like this actually. Why don't you bother trying? Oh, the flicks. Now actually the flick shot's actually quite cool. Anyway, I'll put up my favourite shot, which I think is pretty much going to be the flick shot, definitely. And I'll jump on my bike and we'll head off to the next location. So I've just come across this little scene, which I think might work quite nicely. Basically, I want to use these sort of leading lines here, because I think they're going to, because there's such a contrast between the crop, that I think that will still work on sort of an abstract sort of feel. And I'm going to go for the sort of semi-shake sort of idea, I think. I think the last shot, definitely the flick for me worked really well. But I think with this, with having such a prominent lead in, I'm hoping that's going to do the job. But of course, I'm out in the open now, so it's a bit brighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit a 3x ND. Now, I'm not using a particularly expensive one here. I think sometimes photography doesn't necessarily have to be super expensive. And I'm using a Gobe one, which I think I paid £30 from off Amazon. And to be honest, they're all right. I use them for video and they're okay. I think with NDs, the weaker ones, like the 1, 2 and 3 stops, generally, as long as you don't go super budget, they're normally okay. I think it's when you sort of get into the 6 and 10 times territory where really you need to get a really good quality one. So yeah, that's fitted, and let's see what I can do. So I've fitted my ND, ISO 100 again. Aperture priority, f18 is giving me 1/4 of a second. So I'm going to try that, and I think as opposed to doing just a straight diggle jiggle, I think I might do a sort of more of a vertical pan jiggle, if that made any sense at all. Try a little jiggle. Actually, the little jiggle works quite nicely. Now, just in case you're wondering why I'm shooting at aperture priority and not shutter priority, it's simply because I find if I do it this way, I'm working with my lens as opposed to against it. So I could have put it in shutter priority and I could say, right, I need, for argument's sake, 1 second. So I put it on 1 second and the camera will still take that shot for 1 second. But if the aperture can't shut down enough, what will happen is your shot will be overexposed because the lens is still letting in too much light. But if I work in aperture priority, what it means is basically I can control the aperture and the camera's just going to adjust the shutter speed accordingly. So that means there's less chance of over or under exposure. You know, both techniques achieve the same thing. I just find aperture priority easier because I don't have to think about being outside my exposure range. And if I find adjust my aperture, I'm not getting to the sort of length of exposure I want, for example, I simply just put a stronger ND filter on. Anyway, I'll stop waffling. So what I'm doing here, I'm almost doing a rocking action. As you can see, I'm pressing the shutter half rock. I think I'm quite pleased with these. Yeah, I'm quite happy. So far, I think this morning I've managed to take 3 shots, which I quite like, which is wonderful, really. Of course, a lot of that could be the fact I'm just trying out a new technique and I'm just actually enjoying the process. But you know, yeah, I've got no complaints. I'm outside, I'm enjoying myself, and I'm learning something new. I'll put that shot up and I'll see you down by the coast. Right, so I've got to the coast and it's incredibly windy, as you've probably gathered. I did try taking a photo of a blue boat on the harbour as I was coming down, and to be honest I thought it'd be a lot better than it was, and I didn't film anything because basically the shot didn't particularly work. I'm going to put the shot up now just so you can sort of see, but really it just wasn't working for me, so that's... I don't know if it's the fact it was a man-made subject, or I just don't know if it's just the fact that I'm very new to this. But anyway, for me it wasn't working. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to swing you around. Apologies for the wind that's probably about to happen. And as you can see, we've got the lighthouse there, and my plan is basically to try and use these yellow flowers at the front here with the lighthouse behind. And it's going to be a case of a bit of a slight jiggler thing, but it's really windy, so I've got a feeling this might be the last shot of the day. But anyway, I'm going to get the camera out, I'm going to do the same again, freestop filter still fitted. And what I did find on that one, I tried a slightly different technique, and effectively what I did is I jiggled right at the start of the shutter, so a bit like this, and then stopped. So right at the start, and then stopped. So what I was finding, I got that nice bit of blur, then enough of a longer exposure to actually sort of render everything recognisable. Because I think that's the point with this, isn't it? So what I'm finding with this sort of technique is I want to be able to recognise what the subject is. I don't want it that blurred that you can't actually make out what the thing is you're actually photographing. But I also want it abstract enough so it almost looks like a painting. But I'm new to this game, you know, and I definitely don't know the answers. I've definitely got a lot to learn. And I think now that the weather's not as nice as I would have hoped, I think I am going to call it today and go back and see how those photos look, just to see if I'm on the right track. But the setup was nice and simple. Camera, lens, freestop filter. That's all you need really. And just a lot of patience. I think I've probably taken about 600 shots. So it's going to be fun narrowing it down to, I think it was probably about 4. But all in all, an enjoyable morning. And I hope you've actually enjoyed the video and learned something from it, if not only from learning from my mistakes. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up. Maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And I'll see you again very soon for another video. Thanks for watching.